Hartley Equipment, and they have a new dealership on Church Road in Gluckstadt. Hartley Equipment, Skag, X-Mark, and Bad Boy zero-turn mowers, all at Hartley Equipment. We're ESPN 105.9 The Zone. We welcome in Tom Luginbill, QB1 at Georgia Tech during his playing days, national champ as a JUCO QB1, now national college football analyst with ESPN. Luke's kind enough to join us every Monday at 9:30. We had a couple of false starts yesterday, so he was kind enough to join us now and a little bit in the next segment as he's getting ready for Thursday night football and studio work with ESPN this year. Lugs, let's start with we touched on this a little bit, but I want to do a little bit more of a deep dive with one of the marquee games this weekend, and that's Texas at Ohio State. You're familiar with both rosters and coaching staffs. So first, I'd like to ask you who has the edge in coaching. Texas returns their OC and Sark, their DC and Kwiatkowski, and their special teams coordinator, who's one of the best in the country. Ron Day lost his OC and DC. Who has the coaching advantage, in your opinion, this weekend?
Well, from continuity in that perspective, it's clearly Texas. You don't have a shift in any type of philosophy. You don't have a change in terminology or verbiage. The scheme remains the same. You've got a quarterback now in Arch Manning that has played under the same quarterback coach, the same coordinator, the same play caller, and the same head coach during his entire short tenure there at Texas. So I think going in, the continuity, the coaching staff, and the personalities that are known and established benefits Texas.
Okay. You've got two quarterbacks that are inexperienced. So
yeah.
Who has the edge, if either team has the edge this weekend?
The quarterback that has the edge is the one that doesn't screw it up. I mean, if we're going to put it in its simplest terms, one of the things that with younger quarterbacks that you've always got to be cautious of is playing within themselves and realizing and understanding they don't have to make every play. They don't have to go out there and wear an S on their chest. They've got to operate the offense, get out of a bad play into a good play if that's what calls for it pre-snap. You've got to then decipher and progress and come up with a positive result. Avoid negative plays, don't turn the ball over, and stay out of third and long. I mean, it sounds overly simplified, but we overcomplicate this game. But the younger and more experienced the quarterback is, oftentimes the harder it is to avoid some of those pitfalls. Now, we've seen more in-game activity from Arch Manning. Played a little bit as a true freshman. We saw a couple of starts last year. I would probably say he has a slight edge just because he's seen more live bullets flying by. But Julian Sayin is a gunslinging, uber-confident, Baker Mayfield type of player that I think knows exactly who he is, and he walks into a huddle with the best receiver in America, and a complement of actually pretty good targets across the board. So, again, I think some of this is a wash, but pay close attention in that game in terms of the young quarterback that understands the importance of managing the game.
Okay. ESPN's Tom Luginbill on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. And this segment is driven by your next GMC Sierra truck at Fowler GMC. Pearl Brandon, FowlerGMC.com. It's almost a pick 'em. Ohio State -1.5. I'm right here on ESPN.com. Right. So, and that's kind of where Tom is guiding us. Now, line of scrimmage. Is it a wash, or is there one unit out of the four that you're like, Bo, keep an eye on these guys because they may win it for this team?
Well, it's a really great question because, obviously Texas, off of the defensive back end and the secondary, lost Jade Barron and Andrew Makuba. But they also returned Michael Tapp and Malik Muhammad. You look at Ohio State, they have some losses in the back end too, but they, I would say, return arguably the best defensive secondary player in all of college football in Caleb Downs. Where I would probably say that there's a bit of an advantage, it's with Texas in their pass rush. You're sitting there with Colin Simmons off the edge after a remarkable freshman All-American season, and then most importantly, you've got Anthony Hill. 16 and a half tackles for loss, 8 sacks, 4 forced fumbles, and he's playing from an off-the-ball position. Gives you an idea of how much havoc he wreaks. So I'm going to be interested to see how Ohio State, who's got a bit of a refurbished offensive line, handles elite pass rush from Texas. So I would say the strength on the defensive side is the Texas linebacking and pass rushing core.
Because of everything you're going over, are you expecting, there's a lot of new, on Saturday at 11 a.m. in Columbus, Ohio, for both teams. Are you expecting a somewhat low-scoring game, Luke?
I think initially, yes. I think there's going to be quite a feel-out period, right? And you're getting a sense for what each team's doing. The quarterbacks and their coaches have to be comfortable and be able to trust them from an in-game perspective. It's not practice anymore. They're no longer untouchable. They are live. Everything is live. And as you get a sense of your quarterback's personality, what he is able to handle, how much you want to put on his plate, probably determines to some degree how confident you feel in ramping it up early and taking shots and getting after it and putting your pedal to the floor. But I wouldn't be surprised with these two defenses and two young, inexperienced quarterbacks if, we see some 3-and-outs early. We see some early punts. Field position becomes a component. If an offense does have an opportunity to sustain a drive, what do they do when they get in the red area? Is it field goals or is it touchdowns? I think those are all things early to look for between these two teams.
All right. Tom Luginbill giving us a little breakdown of Texas, Ohio State. LSU, Clemson. It's a big game for Brian Kelly. It's a big game for Dabo. I was listening to some of your colleagues. They're not quite as sold on Clemson. So as far as talent, no, let's go coaching. Who has the edge in coaching at Clemson on Saturday?
Dabo Swinney.
Okay.
And I think it's because he knows a little bit more about his team. He's been in these moments maybe a bit more in terms of expectations. Not that Brian Kelly hasn't, obviously, in national championships at the lower levels, conference championships at the FBS level. Has played for a national championship. But I think it's not so much the coaching side of it, Bo. It's how far has LSU come in improving their defense? 2 years ago, this was the worst statistical defense in the SEC. Can you believe we're saying that about LSU?
No.
And I thought that Blake Baker, was able to, in a transition year, bolster things back up, make them a little bit more respectable. But I want to see if they can come up with the defensive front that we've become accustomed to seeing from elite level LSU teams on defense. And we've been missing that for the last 3 to 4 years. And, 5 of those 7 starters are returning in the front 7 for LSU on defense, as are the same amount of starters for Clemson on defense. Only Clemson's got far more returning experience and production, particularly in the front with Peter Woods and TJ Parker. So, how does that front, particularly down the middle of the defense, perform? And because I think that's going to have a distinct impact on the back end for LSU. LSU a year ago had coverage breakdowns and missed tackles that were really concerning, and a lot of that can be tied to the front.
Tom Luginbill, national college football analyst with ESPN, is going to join us from 7:30 to 7:40 coming up in the next segment because we've got some more games to hit. And I want to ask Tom about how you prepare to get your offensive line game day ready with the portal this day and age and that many new guys coming in, because I think that's the most difficult position to get the chemistry right. Lugs, more with Lugs coming up next. Saturday Hit this morning is brought to you by Blue Cross Blue Shield of Mississippi. It's good to be blue. The official healthcare provider of the Out of Bounds Show, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Mississippi. We are the Out of Bounds Show. 105.9 The Zone, ESPN. Our friend Tom Luginbill with ESPN joins us on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. Luke's, we had a couple of questions. I got to go back to Ohio State, their new quarterback, Julian Sayin. Tell me about him as far as a recruit and how he levels up talent-wise to Arch Manning.
Yeah, top 5 player at his position. We had him in the Under Armour All-America game. When you look at him, you're going to say, okay, you kind of got to shrug your shoulders, not physically imposing, doesn't, meet the measurable standard that you'd like to have. Well, certainly in the old days. Now, I mean, when I played, if you were a 6-foot quarterback, you had no shot at playing Division I football. They wouldn't even sign you. It doesn't even matter how talented you are. Now, talent has superseded the physical measurables. So, as I referenced on the last segment, he's got some Baker Mayfield type traits in terms of competitive temperament and kind of a riverboat gambler mentality. Good arm. I don't think he's got an elite arm, but he can move around. He can make plays. He's extremely accurate. I'll be very interested to see. I was actually surprised when he left Alabama, because when he arrived at Alabama, and then Nick Saban decides that he's gonna retire, and then you get a guy like Kalen DeBoer, and what that offense has done, I actually thought he would stick around, and so that surprised me a little bit. But listen, he went in and he's beaten out 2 other guys, and has earned the right to be the guy to take the first snap.
Okay, so what is he, 5'11", 6 feet, 200-something pounds?
I don't even know if he's 200 pounds. He may be in the 190-ish range unless he's significantly bulked up. He's not, he's not a physically imposing guy. If you watch the game at noon on Saturday, you'll see a guy that's a little bit more diminutive in stature.
Okay. This is going to be... And then Arch is big and can actually move, whereas Peyton and Eli couldn't move. Arch,
well, this kid can too. This
okay.
kid can move around too. Oh,
okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And listen, who's to say that, Garrett Nussmeier, when he came out of high school, Garrett Nussmeier has grown in college. He's got about 1.5 inches that he didn't have as a senior in high school. He's gained significant weight, but obviously that comes through time and maturity, and he's been there an awful long time. So, how these kids mature and at what rate they mature, maybe he becomes a different guy physically.
Yeah. All right. Tom Luginbill on the Out of Bounds Show, brought to you by your next Bad Boy Zero Turn or X Mark lawnmower at Hartley Equipment in Gluckstadt. I want to go back to LSU and Clemson. So LSU has been on this run, as you well know. You've talked about it on TV, where they haven't won their first game since 2019 with Joe Burrow and that group, Dave Aranda and all them. So there's a little bit of although he's knocking down 9-win seasons, he's just not having the big season down in Baton Rouge. So he's in a little bit different space than Hugh Freeze is at Auburn. What are you? I mean, you give a pretty nice advantage to Clemson in this game because of kind of everything they've got coming back and it being at Clemson, Luke's?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's very similar to what the discussion we just had about Ohio State and Texas. It's Ohio State -1. Well, if that game was in Austin, it would probably be Texas -1.
Right.
Right? And Vegas loves to give credence to home field advantages, and clearly LSU and Clemson, when they play at home, have distinct advantages. And so I think the returning experience across the board, top to bottom, with how Clemson has been built and how they have developed their roster, the fact that they've been able to recruit and retain, and then what they've done in NIL is they've reinvested into players on their own roster as opposed to going out and trying to replace them. And in doing so, they have very little turnover, so they've sustained consistency. And I think a locker room that knows each other has some advantages, and that's not a program that's got 30, 40 players going in and out the door each and every year. And, just listen, look at the last 2 to 3 years, Bo. I mean, all of the criticism of Dabo Swinney, you're going to get left behind. You've got to do what everybody else is doing. Why won't you go into the transfer portal? Well, who's laughing now? Because by not doing that, and adhering to his principles and the foundational pillars of the program, he's been able to preserve what got this program to this point. And, you know, a lot of people thought it couldn't be done. But I think when you come into a season where you've got very few new faces, a lot of returning experience and returning starters, and a team that knows each other, that counts for something.
Okay. Couple more minutes here with Tom Luginbill. Let's go Alabama. We got a big Alabama contingent here in Central Mississippi. All right, Bama at Florida State. I think they blow Florida State out. You tell me why I'm wrong or why I may be right, Luke.
No, to be honest with you, I think you're right. This Alabama team in year two, I think, is really loaded. Defensively, they are stacked across the board at all three levels for Kane Womack. They've got, I think, a quarterback that, and I've said this before, I believe, on this show, I have a tremendous amount of respect for Ty Simpson because he could have left, and he could have left multiple times and for a lot of money, and he didn't do it. Well, look at who else has been flourishing in college football because they didn't leave, right? Garrett Nussmeier, all right? Carson Beck when he was at Georgia initially and hung in there and stuck around and then became the starter for 2 years and was a better player for it. I think we could see that happen with Ty Simpson. And so I feel really good about them. With Florida State, I mean, gosh, Bo, there's nowhere to go but up. But they're not playing with the same roster that Alabama has. And I've said this multiple times. They are the case study in what happens when you make good decisions in the transfer portal, all right, 2013. Because let's not forget, that entire team, on almost every impactful player that made that undefeated regular season team, was a transfer. Johnny Wilson, Keon Coleman, Jaheim Bell, Trey Benson, Jordan Travis, Braden Fisk, Jared Verse, all of those guys, transfers. Well, guess what? They all left at the same time. Then the following year, you make very poor decisions in the transfer portal. And where I think Florida State's had a distinct problem is they have not developed their high school recruiting pool to replace those guys. And so now you look at, okay, Deuce Robinson comes in from SC, Squirrel White comes in from Tennessee, Thomas Castellanos, who at his best is really good, at his worst is not very good. You've got a new offensive coordinator. I don't think anybody knows. Do I think they'll be improved? Yes. Do I think that they are on the level of an Alabama when it comes to personnel? Absolutely not.
All right, let's rapid fire for the next couple of minutes. We still got maybe two more games. Notre Dame and Miami. Freeman did an amazing job last year. Cristobal may be the number one recruiter in the country, but they go from Cam Ward to Carson Beck. Notre Dame has a new quarterback, as you well know, with Riley Leonard gone. Who do you like and why in Coral Gables on Sunday?
I don't really care that it's a home game for Miami because that's not necessarily an advantage.
Great point.
But I do think the experience of the quarterback position carries a lot of weight. And maybe there's some faults with Carson Beck, but when he's playing well, he's as pure of a passer as we have in college football. I think the offense for Miami will look different because you're not going to have the creative improvisational plays that you had with Cam Ward, and that's fine. It just may be a little bit of a different approach of how you get from point A to point B. Two things to look out for in this game. Has Miami corrected their issues in two areas? The defensive secondary allowing way too many big plays, explosive plays, and Miami managing a game late when it's tight, when it's a one-score game. The sideline for Miami's got to improve when it comes to managing the game. For Notre Dame, it's all about whether or not they can create some explosives on offense. I think C.J. Carr won the job over Kenny Minchie because he showed more consistency in the downfield passing game. Last year, Notre Dame was 114th in the country in passing plays of 20 yards or more. They couldn't push the ball downfield. We know they're good in the offensive line. We know they've got a great tandem at running back. They need a quarterback that can create explosive plays in the passing game. And if C.J. Carr can do that, I think we're going to have a heck of a football game.
All right, dude. You rock. I appreciate you working with us this week and looking forward to hanging out with you on Mondays at 9:30 our time and 10:30
You got it.
your time. Appreciate it, Luke.
Sounds good, brother. See ya.